Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Stevens, and I want to read a poem to you. A couple of things before I do that. First of all, why read? That is, read out loud. We need to remember that poetry was originally meant to be read out loud, and it is still the best way to read a poem. Poetry goes all the way back to song. Our first poems, and by our I mean us as a human race, our very first poems were songs, and poetry still retains a close connection with music, and it is best understood if it is heard. So that's the whole idea here. Let's read out loud and let's try to hear the poem in order to better understand it. The poem in this case is Coleridge's Frost at Midnight, a blank meditation, which is a form of poem that was popular among the poets of the Romantic period. So let's begin. First of all, point out a few items in the poem that will help you understand it better. First of all, it begins by setting the scene. And Coleridge sets the scene in his house, his cottage, he calls it, where everybody is asleep, and that includes his baby son, who is in a cradle next to him. So you want to have that setting in your mind. The poet is speaking in this particular setting. This is what we sometimes call the dramatic situation. What are the circumstances in which the poet is speaking? So he is then speaking at night in a dwelling where everyone is asleep, and next to him is his baby son. The second thing is this thing called a film that flutters on the grate of his fireplace. The house is warmed by a fire in the fireplace, and he refers to a film, and later on he calls it a fluttering stranger. So you need to understand what that is. And that is simply a piece of soot from the fire that is caught on one of the bars or the grate of the fireplace, and it is simply sitting there, fluttering up and down, this piece of soot. There are a few other items that I might mention as we read, but let's begin. Let's see how that goes. All right. Frost at Midnight by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. The frost performs its secret ministry. What's the ministry of frost? To get cold, right? And to freeze things. All right. That's what frost does. It makes things cold. That is its secret ministry. Its secret ministry, unhelped by any wind, the owlet's cry came loud, and hark again, loud as before. The inmates of my cottage, all at rest, have left me to that solitude which suits abstruser musings. That is, his solitude, his being alone by himself, is suited to the act of thinking, of meditating. Okay, which left me to that solitude which suits abstruser musing, save that at my side my cradled infant slumbers peacefully. The calm 'tis calm indeed, so calm that it disturbs and vexes meditation with its strange and extreme silentness. Sea, hill, and wood, this populous village, sea and hill and wood, with all the numberless goings on of life, inaudible as dreams. The thin blue flame lies on my low burnt fire and quivers not. Only that film which fluttered on the grate still flutters there, the sole unquiet thing, the only unquiet thing, right? Methinks its motion in this hush of nature gives it dim sympathies with me who live. making it a companionable form, whose puny flaps and freaks the idling spirit by its own moods interprets, everywhere echo or mirror seeking of itself, and makes a toy of thought. But oh, how oft, by the way, often, right? Okay, archaic form of often, but no mystery there. But oh, how oft at school with most believing mind presageful have I gazed upon the bars to watch that fluttering stranger. Okay, the um, film or the soot that's fluttering on the grate now is reminding him of times at school when he would also be sitting by the fire and watching that fluttering piece of soot. To watch that fluttering stranger, and as oft with unclosed lids already had I dreamt of my sweet birthplace and the old church tower, whose bells, the poor man's only music, rang from morn to evening all the hot fair day, so sweetly that they stirred and haunted me with a wild pleasure falling on mine ear, most like articulate sounds of things to come. So gazed I, till the soothing things I dreamt lulled me to sleep, and sleep prolonged my dreams. And so I brooded all the following morn, awed by the stern preceptor's face, mine eye fixed with mock study on my swimming book. Okay, he's saying the same thing, the same dreamy state continued when he was at school, in the schoolroom, with the stern preceptor, that would be his teacher, staring at the boys in the classroom, right? Okay? Save if the door half opened, all right? So I brooded all the following morn, fixed with mock study on my swimming book. That is, he's trying to concentrate on his book, so he would be fixed on his book unless the door half opened, and I snatched a hasty glance, and still my heart leapt up, for still I hoped to see the stranger's face, townsman or aunt or sister more beloved, my playmate when we both were clothed alike. Dear babe, that sleepest cradled by my side. Okay, now he's addressing his son, right? Okay, he's been thinking, remembering his days at school, and now he is looking at his son and addressing his son. All right? Dear babe, that sleepest cradled by my side, whose gentle breathings heard in this deep calm filled up the interspersed vacancies and momentary pauses of the thought. All right, well, we know that what it is. We're thinking, and sometimes the mind goes blank, right? And we stop thinking, or we might move on to another thought, and so on. Momentary pauses of the thought. My babe, so beautiful, it thrills my heart with tender gladness thus to look at thee, and think that thou shalt learn far other lore, and in far other scenes. For I was reared in the great city, pent mid cloisters dim, cloisters and closed places. Okay, that's what a cloister is. Pent, that is closed up, and saw not lovely but the sky and stars. But thou, my babe, shalt wander like a breeze by lakes and sandy shores, beneath the crags of ancient mountains, and beneath the clouds, which image in their bulk both lakes and shores. The clouds are imaging the landscape below them, right? And mountain crags, so shalt thou see and hear. Talking to his son, right? So you will see and hear the lovely shapes and sounds intelligible of that eternal language which thy God utters, who from eternity doth teach himself in all. That is, God teaches about himself in all of nature. All right? which thy God utters, and from eternity doth teach himself in all and all things in himself. Great universal teacher, he shall mold thy spirit, and by giving make it ask. And in conclusion then, all right, he's been talking to his son, therefore all seasons shall be sweet to thee. To his son, all right, to you, my son, all seasons shall be sweet, whether the summer clothe the general earth with greenness, or the redbreast sit and sing beneath the tufts of snow on the bare branch of mossy apple tree, while the nigh thatch smokes in the sun thaw, whether the eavesdrops fall heard only in the trances of the blast, that would be the wind, or if the secret ministry of frost shall hang them up in silent icicles, quietly shining to the quiet moon. Frost at Midnight by Coleridge. And notice how at the end of the poem he comes back to the image that he opens the poem with of the frost performing its secret ministry. And in this particular case, the frost is freezing the water that drips from the roof, right? We know what that's like, okay? Even in Baltimore, we see the snow melting on the roof and the water drips down, and the frost freezes it into icicles. This poem is what we call a blank verse meditation. Now, I've made reference to the fact that what Coleridge is doing in this poem is he's thinking about his childhood, thinking about his son and the kind of upbringing that his son will have, and all of these things. So we know what we mean by meditation. He's thinking about things, right? Blank verse, what does that mean? All right, in conclusion, just want to give you an idea of what we mean by blank verse. Blank verse is the verse form that Shakespeare's famous speeches were written in, like Hamlet's to be or not to be soliloquy. All right, Shakespeare's plays are written in blank verse. Blank verse simply refers to the rhythm or the meter of the line of the poem, each line being the same. And that line goes something like da-dum, 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 da-dum. All right? It's called iambic pentameter. Okay, so we take the first line of this poem. The frost performs its secret ministries. All right, you hear the ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. That's iambic pentameter. It's the most common meter in English poetry. The frost performs its secret ministries, unhelped by any wind, the owlet's cry came loud, and hark again loud as before. Pick up your book, all right, and see if you can't figure out the blank verse, the iambic pentameter of each line. Thanks for listening, folks, and I'll see you in discussion. We're going to be talking about this poem.